Good evening. It is Monday, May 10th. This is Legit Fantasy Basketball, broadcasting from the basement in North Providence, Rhode Island. We're going to cover all things NBA over the past week, and to do that, I need my personal basketball guru, Coach TJ. How's it going tonight?
Going terrific. Kev, for you tonight?
Yeah. Doing all right, but doing pretty good. Rough weekend. Probably stayed out a little bit too late last night. Translated to a bad work day. Luckily, I didn't get too many bets down because last night a little bit of a weird night NBA wise. I got a couple of $10 bets down and actually hit them, but I'm glad I was a little bit conservative. So that said, we haven't spoken in a week. We missed the Thursday show. It was actually my birthday, so I took the night off. Went to Peter Luger in New York City. If you've never been there, I highly recommend it if you're a steakhouse fan. It's absolutely unbelievable. The place hasn't changed in like 100 years. The way the menu is broken out, you don't pick the cut. You don't pick anything. It's steak for one, steak for two, steak for three, steak for four. You just tell them how you want it cooked, pick some sides, and that's it. But it's like total carnivore place. It's unbelievable. And it's cash only. So it's like old school Brooklyn place right by the Williamsburg Bridge.
So it comes back. You can't be like, nah, I wanted a New York strip.
No, it's always like a T-bone. It's always a T-bone. It's just how big, how many of them and how big, and then that's it. That's awesome. Your only choices. Unbelievable. And then the second day, my girlfriend had steak and eggs. Unbelievable on the second day too. So highly recommend it if you're down in New York, you can get a reservation. It's been a little easier than normal because of the pandemic, but it's usually booked up like 4 to 6 months in advance. You can't even get a table. Yeah,
so that's terrible.
Yeah, nuts. Yeah, so Peter Luger, that's my recommendation for the week. Speaking of Brooklyn, actually in the game review, which actually have to get to a few more games than normal since we didn't talk on Thursday, so we'll probably kind of go through these at a little bit of a fast clip. But Brooklyn is the first game up, and it was the last Tuesday, May 4th. The Nets dropped one to the Bucks, 118-124, and I only have that game on there because when we talked last. They had just dropped one to the Bucks, I believe, on Sunday. So I think they went 0-2 against the Bucks in the last week or so. And I kind of wanted to get your take on that. To me, it sends a message, but I'm always looking for a message.
I agree. It sends a message. Now, if you're a Brooklyn fan, the one thing you can take away from it is that you have no Harden. Like, what is going on with James Harden right now? I have no idea. But that's one thing you can take away from it. And the second thing you can take away from it is nobody can guard Kyrie and Durant. But the Bucks are on a mission. They're playing these games like they're playoff games. They're going to mess around and end up in the 2 seed, which I think is huge for them. And that last week, sent a real message, definitely to Brooklyn and probably to the whole Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I completely agreed. And Giannis had another monster game. I think he had 36 points. Middleton had 20 in the 20s. I think Holiday had 23. Holiday had 23, and they just kind of beat up Durant like the entire game. So it's going to be very interesting if these two teams go at it in the playoffs. But agree with everything you said. And one other thing that's kind of funny, as soon as I saw this, I looked and I realized Harden didn't play. And so I checked it. He's missed now 17 games. There's a chance he comes back on Wednesday. He'll have missed 19 games, and I think they'll have about maybe 3 left with the 3 of them all together before the playoffs start. But he said he's confident he's going to be back before the end of the season. So we'll see. But that was the first thing I looked at also. Where's Harden?
I'm sure he's going to be back. But how do you get back and then get incorporated at the same time when you have 2 other ball dominant scorers like yourself? Like Kyrie's not about to take a back seat after dropping 30 for a month and go be the third fiddle. So that's a real interesting operation over there in Brooklyn. And like I said in the past, better get them this year because when those 3 come back next year, they're going to be unstoppable.
Yep, exactly. Cool. All right, so moving on to Sunday. This one jumped out at me. Suns 103, Hawks 135. For 2 reasons. One, the Suns have been sort of the darling of the NBA over the past month or so. They've really brought it. But the Hawks, beat them by 30, and the Hawks have looked great since they replaced their coach. So is there something maybe the Suns are a little bit weaker than we thought? And the other thing I wanted to bring up is Phoenix is only 3-2 in the month of May, so they're not really tearing it up right now. So should we have some concern in Phoenix?
No, I don't think so. I think it's one of those things where you fight back, and you see this more in baseball where to get to that number 1 spot, which I think they got there for a couple of days.
Yeah.
You can only peak so long, and then you kind of deflate a little bit. And heading into the playoffs, I'm not overly worried about it because I feel like when the playoffs come, everyone's going to put their best foot forward. Definitely not a good thing, because I think they really were the best team in the West for some time in April, and right now it looks like they're going to settle into that 2 seed.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, cool. All right, I don't have anything to add to that one, so we'll move on to the next one, which is was a great game. It was the Wizards against the Bucks on Wednesday, and it was final was Wizards 134, Bucks 135, and I had that as the third part of a three-game parlay, one baseball, one hockey, one basketball, and I had Washington outright. So I lost that one by a point. It would have been the other two cash. I was a little bit disappointed, but what a monster game. 134, 135.
It's great. Wizards games are exciting. Like, they just are. They just the way they play the tempo of the game, they force the tempo. What's probably under the radar that's key is that the Bucks have shown they can play at that tempo. And I think when you look at Milwaukee and you say, okay, what can't they do? And you look at their roster, it's like, well, maybe they can't put up a $140. Because, you look and you see Giannis, obviously, but then, do they have enough guys? Like, I don't even think Middleton played in that game. Like, Middleton might not even play in that Bucks game. And they still put up that kind of point total. So that trends real well for Milwaukee. The Wizards are a team that nobody wants to play. Like, you just don't want to play them. They're so dangerous. And if they get in that play-in tournament, like, I don't know how you don't pick them to win a game. Like, really, they're that explosive, and it seems to be coming together. So that's really where both of those teams stand right now going into the playoffs. They're both trending in the right direction.
Yep, exactly. And just, ho-hum, nothing to see here. Westbrook, 29 points, 17 assists, 12 rebounds. Nothing to see here, right?
And I'm glad when I saw the notes for the show, I'm glad that was on there, because to me this is going to be the most overlooked story of one of the great seasons in the history of the NBA.
Yep.
In his last month of games, he's averaging 26, 16, and 16. He's like 6'2", with out of control what he's doing. He's about to pass Oscar Robertson in a record I think most basketball fans felt like that's one of our – there's not a lot of records in basketball that are unbreakable. And I think growing up, when Magic couldn't do it, you always felt like, okay, Oscar's triple-double record is unbreakable, and Kareem's scoring record is equally unbreakable. And I think within, this year, we're going to watch Westbrook break it, and eventually LeBron's going to break Kareem's. But for Westbrook to do what he does and not be the number one story in the NBA, it bothers me a lot. It's
like an anti-story. It's like there's always an excuse. Well, he does too much of this or he doesn't do enough of that. And I mean, it's really crazy how and I've even heard people call his MVP season suspect. And I'm just it's
nonsense. It's a bunch of people that don't like Westbrook because Westbrook is about showing up and playing 150%. And it definitely exposes a lot of people. And, I'm big on the culture, Kev. He's almost like counterculture, as he's just a workaholic. He's that son of a gun in your office that works twice as hard as everybody else. You kind of hate him and you wish he would take his foot off the gas once in a while, because it makes you look bad when you have a hangover day, right? That's Westbrook. In this season right here, if he played the rest of the games, and this goes back a couple of days I saw this, if he played the rest of the games and put up a bunch of zeros for the next 10 games, he would still average a triple-double. Like, that's mind-blowing. That means the guy can show up there and do nothing, and it would still be one of the great seasons of all time. This has got to be the third time he averaged a triple-double. Like, Russell Westbrook's a Hall of Famer and an all-around badass. And I feel like he's not getting his due this season, and I suspect his career is going to be one of those that's not appreciated, almost like Oscar Robertson, where his career is not going to be fully appreciated by anyone outside of those that really love this game. Yep.
Yeah, it's a very good way to put it. Yeah, and I'm glad we kind of hit him because, all those reasons. I wanted to make sure we at least talked about him a little. So it was an amazing game, and he had another amazing night. And I really hope they hang on, make the play-in tournament, because I'm going to force myself to watch at least a couple of their games, because I don't. That's the other thing.
There's people watching that don't want to give him credit, and you want to say, if you can't appreciate this, there is no excuse for what he's doing. Because if it was this freaking easy, then not only would everyone do it, somebody else would do it. And when you're doing something that you don't think anybody else wants to average a triple-double, you don't think anybody else wants to put up these numbers, of course they do. They used to give us that bull crap with Ichiro. Well, if he wanted to hit a home run every time, he would.
Yeah.
Well, that's patently false. Because if he could hit a home run every time he was at the plate, then he would do it, right? So if everybody could average a triple-double, then somebody else would do it, and no one else comes even close. The kid's special. He's having a great year, one of the greatest seasons in NBA history. And it's going to take nerds like me that talk about it because he's not even going to win the MVP. It's out of control.
No, he's not. He's not even going to come close. No. And then, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, my guy who I hope will one day become a friend of the show, Robin Lopez. Another great night. 4 for 6 from the floor, 6 rebounds, 8 points. 3 blocks. Can't win. They're not going to be winning these games without him.
No, you can't do anything. Can't do anything without him. In fact, though, I'll tell you what: if Beal and Westbrook stay together, that's the position where they have to make a marked improvement. Take the efficiency aside. They need somebody that's more bouncy defensively. Yeah. Because you can't win championships and you can't be a top seed if you're averaging. Your over under on every game they play is like 450. It's out of control.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I'm going to bring up the Lopez thing every time because of the stats and everything. But you're right. I mean, he doesn't play enough minutes. He's not active enough. But I do love the efficiency numbers. So, all right. So moving on. Next one, probably a quick one. I said I'd kind of try to focus a little bit on the Knicks. So we got 2 Knicks games in this slate to review. The one on Wednesday, the 5th, the Knicks dropped to the Nuggets 113-97. And I bring it up more for the Nuggets than the Knicks in this one because Denver just won't give up. I mean, they just will not accept the fact that without Jamal Murray, they have no chance. They won't accept it. And I think beating a good Knicks team is another fine showing for them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's how Coach of the Year awards are won, and that's how Jokic's going to win the MVP because without Jamal Murray, I wrote him off. Really, okay, nice run, you were good in the bubble, see you later, and that's not the case at all. I still think the Knicks are going to give the Hawks everything they want in that first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. I think that's as far as it goes. But yeah, Denver, there's no quit in Denver. You look at them on paper and you kind of don't love them without Murray. Son of a gun, they keep playing. Yep, exactly.
All right, cool. So moving on to May 6th, Thursday. First one is another Brooklyn game. This one, again, didn't go their way. It's Nets 109, Mavs 113. And again, that I bring up a lot of Mavs games on here because I get very, very frustrated with them. But they seem to have kind of turned it on a little bit and seem to be taking it a little more seriously. And obviously beating the Nets by 4 in a close one. I think that was a little bit of that gives me positive. I think they've kind of turned a corner in a positive direction.
Yeah, it's definitely a quality win for them, and that's what you're looking for out of Dallas because they have been kind of inconsistent. They always seem to beat the teams they should be, but then they lose some games and you kind of you're at home, you should win that one. No, that's definitely a good win for them. And again, it's another Nets game where Kyrie goes for 45 and they don't get the win. So I feel like that's almost the game plan against them right now that they are starting to see formulated where it's like, okay, these 2 guys are going to do what they do, and then we're going to buckle down the role players and try and win that way. So yeah, good win by Dallas. They've kind of locked themselves in as far as their seeding goes. They're not going to be in the play-in tournament, I don't think. Yeah. And definitely good win for Dallas.
Yep, exactly. All right, the next one is a very quick one, and just because there's a little bit of storyline there. Atlanta 126, Indiana 133. And the reason why I have that one up there, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but the coach from Indiana is on the hot seat, but it was good to see. Unfortunately, I was hoping that Atlanta would go back in there with Nate McMillan to get a win since Indiana had fired him as their coach last season. Didn't work out. Somehow Indiana pulled it off, but I think Atlanta's still a team to watch. So.
They are. Yeah. Atlanta and the Knicks that's going to probably be the NBA TV playoff bracket where they don't want to put that on primetime because it just doesn't have that power yet. But Atlanta's a team on the rise. Overall they're on the rise. I think they're actually ahead of schedule. So, and I think Indiana's a team that despite the win, I don't love what's going on over there. I don't see I mean, Sabonis is what he is. You kind of can talk yourself into him, but I don't love what's going on in Indiana right now. And I think if you had to pick one of the two teams, buy a stock for the next 3 years, I would buy Atlanta as opposed to the Pacers.
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the coaching situation there a little bit later, but definitely agreed. And the other one from Thursday was Lakers dropping one to the Clippers in kind of a blowout. They lost 118 to 94. Now, obviously, LeBron did not play. You never know what's going on over there, who's in, who's out. Are they going to be able to kind of pull it all together? But I thought it was a good win by the Clippers, and in any event, they kind of took care of business the way they should.
It was, and you know what that win sparked? It sparked a lot of the talking heads on TV talking about the Clippers are probably the team to beat in the West, and you kind of knew that was coming the way they handled them. It made me think a little bit deeper about maybe the Clippers are the team to beat in the West. I think the West is wide open. It's hard to make a statement game. It's hard to have a statement win against the Lakers when they're not playing at full strength.
Yeah.
Or when they don't look like they're trying to win. Like, that's the kind of game you stay up for, Lakers, Clippers. Like, you get excited about it, and then it's like, oh, I should have watched Seinfeld and went to bed, and that kind of stuff. But, the Lakers are right now, if it ends right now, they're in that little fake playoff tournament, and the Clippers have moved ahead of Denver for the 3 seed. So that's what got laid out this last week.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you already heard, I'm sure you've heard LeBron kind of complaining about the play-in tournament, all that stuff already. He doesn't want to play in it, blah, 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 blah. So it'll be, typical LA drama. No. I mean,
I don't like the play-in tournament either, but here's a solution to not playing in the play-in tournament. There's a real easy solution, LeBron. Yeah. Go win some effing games. That'll avoid the tournament.
Exactly. All right, so that covers the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday games. Before we jump into the weekend games, so that kind of gets us a little bit more current. But before we jump into the weekend games, I want to just get your thoughts on one of the games that tips off tonight. Usually we do that after reviewing all of them, but we just want to make sure we get our thoughts down on that one. Since it's 8:25, game tips off at 8:40. It's Milwaukee at San Antonio. Spurs are favored by 7. Over under is 233.5. I didn't put anything down on this one yet. But if I had to, I would probably, this is a tough one. I say I would probably take the Spurs with the 7.5, but the Bucks don't shy about blowing teams out, and they're 5-0 in May. So maybe this is a stay away game. But what are your thoughts?
It kind of is. Here's a surprising thing about the Bucks. They're under 500 against the spread. Yeah. Which I bet you
I didn't know that.
I bet you over under half the people wouldn't guess that, right? So they're under 500 against the spread. I don't love what the Spurs have overall, what they have, but they do have a home game and they do have a 7-point, window. So to me, if I had to put money on it, I'd probably take the Spurs at home, which would probably be the unpopular against the green pick. Easy to take the Bucks right now. They're on fire. Yeah. Bucks are going to win the game outright. They're still playing for a seed. They're trying to get that home round against the Nets. They are. So to me, the smart money's on the Spurs tonight, but it's a tough one. I'd stay away if I had the choice.
Yeah, I think I'm going to stay away. What I might do is under 233.5. That seems a little bit high, although we know the Bucks can put up points, but the Spurs don't generally run games into the 130. So maybe or 120s, I should say. So maybe I'll hit the under. Yeah, you know what I'm going to put? I'm going to put a quick bet in on the under for us. And that's it. We'll stay away from the side.
Not a bad play because the Spurs haven't scored 110 points in like 2 weeks. It's been a while since they put up real offensive numbers. So yeah, to me, the under is a smart move.
All right, cool. All right, excellent. So we'll get that down. All right. So that is officially submitted. This is Sports Betting Live, which you know what, we should probably look into I'm in Rhode Island, so it is legal. So we're in good shape. So, all right. So next, so kind of hitting the games from the weekend. About two games per day. Friday, the May 7th. Nuggets 120, Jazz 127. Now we're saying the Nuggets refuse to die, but the Jazz I think are reasserting themselves. My biggest concern with them is Donovan Mitchell. Like, is he going to be 100% back? Like, when is he going to be 100% back? So what are your thoughts on that one? Nuggets 120, Jazz 127.
Yeah, you're exactly right what you said about the Jazz starting to reassert themselves, right? So there was this thing where Utah and Phoenix kind of looked neck and neck, and then Phoenix runs out of gas and Utah stepped on the gas. I thought it was a typo when I saw the box score when Bogdanovic was for 48. That's crazy. There was some big individual scoring efforts in the last week in the NBA. That one was probably the most surprising. I don't think you can rely on that to win playoff series. I think they need Donovan Mitchell back and at least a threat to go get 20. Whether it'll happen or not, I don't know. But yeah, Utah, like you said, Utah's starting to reassert themselves with the 1 seed for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they're gonna end up locking it down. But do you know? And I didn't look it up before. So if you don't know, it's cool. But what is Mitchell's injury? Like, what's the status? Is it serious?
Not a lot, but the games keep going by.
Yeah,
it's kind of one of these things. And here's the downside of Donovan Mitchell not being treated like a star by the media. You don't hear anything about it. It's like, okay, he's the leading scorer on the best team. And his injury status is like a big unknown. Like, is he coming back? Is he playing? Is he? I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that one too. All right, so the next one on here is another Knicks one. Unfortunately, a loss, but I like what Phoenix did. Knicks 105. Knicks 105. Suns 128. And the real story for that one is the Knicks just completely collapsed in the second half, especially the fourth quarter. They got outscored in the third, 34-25, and they got outscored in the fourth, 38-17, and ended up dropping it by 23. So, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, just one thing. That's called quitting. That's called getting ready for the plane right there. You see that in baseball. They call it a getaway day in baseball, where the Yankees are flying from Oakland back home, and if they're down 3 runs in the first inning, you're like, this one's over, check out. That's what the Knicks did. They checked out. It's a sign of a young team. You kind of almost give them a pass on that. What was a good sign, though, is when Ayton goes for 26 points. If Ayton can be an effective scorer for Phoenix, he can really separate them in the West and drag them a long way. So if we get Ayton Gobert, and Gobert can keep Ayton to taking, 4 floating running hooks and not getting points, I think it's good. It's good for his confidence to have a high scoring game against a decent Knicks.
All right, cool. Yeah, it's fine. I hadn't thought about that sort of getaway angle, but it would make sense. That just horrible collapse. I mean, they were in it at halftime. They were up at halftime. And they just got.
Sometimes you just run out of gas, and then the wheels come off real quick, especially on the road 3,000 miles away.
Yep. Well, all right, cool. So that takes care of Friday. So Saturday, first one is Nets 125, Nuggets 119. So it's funny, we were talking about the Nuggets kind of refusing to die, but on the Friday night they drop one to the Jazz, Saturday they drop one to the Nuggets. So do we need to is reality setting in there? Maybe it's not going to be enough to kind of pull them along.
Well, I mean, those are two of the 5 best teams in the NBA that they played. So, they're not that dominant where they can go run a gauntlet on the NBA's best teams, but they're competitive in these games. They led for pretty much the whole Brooklyn game. So when they had the Nets come back. I mean, Durant is Durant. Kyrie had another 31, but the Nets had to come back and fight their way to that win. I wouldn't read too much into it if I'm Denver, but here's the thing: it depends on where your goals are for the Nuggets. If you think they're an NBA Finals team, then they have to be able to beat NBA Finals teams. And if you think like I do, I think they're win around and then lose to the Clips. This is kind of what you would expect. But yeah, that's a tough. The Nets are a tough matchup.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is another one where kind of tale of two halves, where they were up at the half by a decent amount. They were up like 71-56, so that's a pretty big lead. Third quarter, they got outscored 41-33. Fourth quarter, they got outscored 28-15. So the Nets really locked it down. And I keep thinking, going back to what you said about how are the Nets going to play when Harden's back? When you got Kyrie having monster game after monster game after monster game, is he going to? I don't think him sliding over to the third fiddle is going to be as easy as most people think. So I agree with you that on that one.
No, and I think the three guys can work together. It's going to be a hard coaching job. I mean, we said that from the time Harden got there. In 3 games, how do you make that happen? Really, how do you do it? You need time to make that happen. I maybe one of those guys, their role is going to be to take every shot out of the second unit. Like it has to be that, where it's like, okay, whichever of the 3, it probably won't be Durant. So say it's Harden or Kyrie turns into the second unit point guard that has the green light every time down, just to accommodate the ego basically. Yeah. One other thing I want to point out about this game, and this has been happening in the league. It's happening with the Celtics a lot lately, where teams go up by 15 points at halftime and then lose, or teams are up by 28 points and win by 5. In the playoffs, two things aren't going to happen. One, those same teams are not going to get down by 15 points. And number two, when you get down by 15 in a playoff game, the clock runs an awful lot faster in the playoffs, it feels like. And I don't think you'll be able to see these kinds of ebbs and flows. I think they'll be more like what we're accustomed to.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that's a really good point. And it gets back to something we talked about a lot. Just games in the playoffs, watching them, betting them, it's a whole nother world. And I completely agree with that. Okay, so next one, the last game for Saturday night is Spurs 102, Blazers 124. And I bring this one up mostly for the Blazers. I mean, they had a pretty bad April. They were 6-10 in April, and now they're 4-1 in May. So we've talked about them as being a very sort of frustrating team to watch, and you never know exactly what you're going to get, except for points. You're always going to get points. So I thought it was kind of good to see them. They should have beaten San Antonio. They did beat San Antonio. They're in I think the 5 or the 6 seed right now. So I thought it was a good win for them.
Yeah, it was a good win for them. And you're right, they did jump up to 6. Right now they're competing with the Lakers to try and stay out of that little round robin action. Is it to get the 60 would be good for them? To get the Clippers in the first round will be bad for them. But yeah, you're right. They can still catch Dallas. They can still drop into the tournament. So Dallas, the Blazers, and the Lakers need every win they can get right now. This play-in tournament has done one thing, and it's made that part of it exciting. Because otherwise, right now, the only story in the West would it be Memphis or Golden State for the 8th seed? And now at least we have something else to watch, and that Portland game, really does matter.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and the Spurs are hanging on to 10. They'll probably end up with 10 because the teams below them: Pelicans, Kings, T-Wolves, Thunder, Rockets. From the Kings on down, they're not really. They shouldn't really be contenders, and unfortunately, the Pelicans lost Zion, so they're probably going to fade away. So Spurs will probably get that 10. All right, cool. So that was the last one for Saturday. Moving on to Sunday, we finally got a Knicks win, and I thought it was a good one. Knicks 106, Clippers 100. So I got to look again at I got to look again at the box score to see who played and who didn't. But that's on the face of it, it seems like a pretty good win for New York.
Oh, that's a really good win for New York. It is, because they had a kind of an up and down week. That's a really, really good win. The one thing about the Knicks, a lot of their success rides on what Derrick Rose does. Like, Derrick Rose plays his game and he gets 20. I feel like the Knicks are so much of a more dangerous team. When he doesn't, they're the Knicks. Kawhi played in the game. Paul George played in the game. Paul George shot terrible. I don't know. I think Paul George was underrated, then he was overrated, and then now he's still overrated. Like, I'm not loving his game at all. I don't think he's a Pippen to Kawhi's Jordan. To me, he's more of a third option right now, even though the media seems to love him. But then you got a Rondo no show, which I think the playoffs are not even that. Watching Julius Randle go left for the 57th season. To me, that's a good win for the Knicks. That's one of those games that makes you feel like the future is bright over there.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good way to put it. And then once you said that, I looked about the shooting. I looked at it. Paul George was 8 for 20. Kawhi was 9 for 26. Not a banner night for either one of those guys. But somehow, Kawhi somehow ended up 29.
I feel like as a coach, the recipe to beating the Clippers is simple. You turn those two guys into jump shooters. That's what you do. Easier said than done. I mean, you got to have the bodies to do it. But it's when Kawhi's slashing and getting layups and taking like little turnarounds that he's dangerous. And Paul George, should let him shoot, for goodness sake. But is they almost play like a Wisconsin defense where everybody's in the paint and they make you a jump shooter. And that's the kind of matchup the Clippers have trouble with.
Okay, no, that's interesting. I had it. Yeah, I'll have to look at that. See, who else do you think Who else do you think could force them to do that? Like in the West, like as they try to battle out, is it something LA could make them do? Is it something like could Phoenix make them do that? Or
I think Phoenix can make them do it. The only thing I worry about with Phoenix is, can the Clippers make Ayton come out and then Ayton's not a factor in the game? Like they could really take him out. Utah plays Ingles a lot of minutes, and I don't know who he's going to guard in that series. Like I don't know how. To me, the Clippers because they're two big wings that are athletic, who has two of those guys that can do it? And I think the Lakers probably do, because LeBron can play one, and then Kuzma can put minutes on the other one. But Ingles is a defensive liability, and I think Ayton for Phoenix is gonna be a problem. That's why the Clippers seem to have a lot of momentum in terms of predictions and whatnot. I mean, I think if Milwaukee had to play the Clippers, Milwaukee just has the answer for them, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's a great point. All right, so moving into the last game on Sunday, this will kind of conclude the game review. Lakers 123, Phoenix 110. I was kind of surprised that they beat them by 13, which is a pretty big win in my opinion. And obviously did it without James. So Anthony Davis went off, 42 points, 12 rebounds. So he had a monster game. What are your thoughts on that one? And I think we talked a little bit earlier about Phoenix maybe running out of gas a little bit. Is this kind of another example of that?
Sort of. I mean, you just got an Anthony Davis remembering how to be Anthony Davis. That's really what you got. I mean, he took 17 free throws. So he was just, when the guy takes 17 free throws, that tells me you don't know how to guard him. So there's been a lot of Embiid games where Embiid will have 16 to 20 free throws, and it's like, well, he's getting every call. No, it's because the guy doesn't know how to guard him, so he has to follow him, and that's the situation. What we were just talking about with Ayton happened in the Lakers game, where Ayton was an absolute no-show, even though he was on the floor for the whole game, because against a team like the Lakers, there's no reason for him to be in the pivot on defense, because Davis is sucking you way out here, and now you have to guard him out there, and you just couldn't do it. So the Lakers really exposed him right there. And with that said, that's the difference in Ayton. That's what we're worried about for the playoffs, is that right there. Chris Paul, notice one thing about Chris Paul, his minutes are starting to creep up as we get towards the playoffs.
Yeah.
So now we're in the 30s now. So that's something to keep an eye on.
Yep, cool. All right, excellent. Good insight there. Okay, so that was the last of the game reviews, at least the ones I had. I don't know if there's anything else over the week. I mean, we covered we covered about 14 or so games. So that's a lot of talking on the games. But if there's anyone that I may have missed, or there's any sort of trend during the last week that you noticed, you have the floor.
Yeah, the one thing I'm noticing right now is the Brad Stevens honeymoon is starting to end around here. I think you're hearing a lot more negative Brad Stevens talk than what we're used to. Spoelstra just kicked his ass in the Miami game. He just exposes him every single time every time Miami plays Boston, Spoelstra does something that Brad Stevens is not ready for. For example, in the playoffs last season, Miami played like 60% zone, and the Celtics had no answer for the zone. It's like, okay, now what? The other night, it was a game where going into the game, and I try to watch as few Celtics games as possible just because I want to be diverse in what I'm watching, first of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, I think they're kind of boring. But it was the game of the night to me. It was Miami-Boston. They're playing for this tournament, indeed, right? They came down and posted Kemba up like 15 times in the first half. And not only did Brad keep his little ass in the game, he wasn't even sending help. And they're just running it right at Kemba. And I think even to non-basketball fans, like basketball as like your second sport type fans, we're like, why is this happening right now? And the Celtics, he's playing Tristan Thompson too many minutes. The Celtics are in a real bad spot right now. And it seems like the only games they can win is when Jason Tatum takes every single shot, and that's just not the recipe for a good outcome.
Yep, agreed. And then we're gonna hit it later, but might as well hit it now since we're switching gears anyway. With Jaylen Brown out for the season, I think that pretty much ends any kind of even the hope against hope. Diehard Celtics fans that thought they could turn it on in the playoffs. I think that kind of puts a nail in the coffin. They might make it in, but I don't see them going very far without him.
Yeah, I think they're pretty much locked in. I don't think there's enough time. If it was an 82-game season, I don't think they would make it. I really don't. Yep. But the only big win with Brown being out, Tatum can take as many shots as he wants. So he seems like the kind of kid that's probably like secretly happy about this shit. Like, okay, it's my time to shine now. Yeah, go get 40 and get bounced in the first round. The writing's on the wall. And I'll tell you, Stevens' win total, the Celtics' win total has decreased each of the last 4 years. And So I remember always saying he was overrated and putting up stats like, look at his winning percentage. Like, what is the hoopla about this guy? And those numbers are getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, he's bordering on a 500 coach now after a long enough stint with good enough talent. And at some point, I think you gotta try something new, because this didn't work for Boston this year. It didn't work at all.
Yep, I completely agreed. Yeah, and I try not to steer a ton of Celtics games, because it's just, it's what everyone around here talks about. But we can't help it, because even they're just so dysfunctional and fun to talk about. Like, from Ainge holding on to all those picks and not making enough moves, to Brad Stevens, the shine kind of wearing off, and you got Tatum with that 60-point game that was kind of a, like, you got Bird 60, you got Tatum 60, and I just wish I don't even want to talk about them in the same sentence. So it's just a fun team to kind of watch and almost kind of celebrate the failure a little bit.
It is, and I think it's because we're in this media market where the green teamers will say nothing bad about a Celtic. I mean, every pick Ainge has is the most important pick in the draft, and then every player is untradeable. I mean, I remember telling people, like, well, you got to get rid of Wanamaker, and you got to get rid of, Semi. Oh no, Wanamaker is one of the most solid backup guards in the league. It's like, dude, it's Brad Wanamaker. Like, what are we talking about over here? They offered that. Although, one good thing, if Hayward goes in there and beats him, that would be awesome. Like, it really would.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
A whole load of money to rehab and play video games.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. So let's just hit the two games at 10-10. Then we'll kind of try to get through some of those discussion topics, probably focus most on the playoffs. But the two games at 10-10 we'll do now. It's Jazz at Golden State. Utah favored by 2.5. Over under 228.5. To me, like that number seems low. So I got to think some Jazz players are sitting out. But yeah,
well,
so
I'll tell you why that number's low. You got no Conley, no Mitchell. So
okay, yeah.
Who the heck is guarding Steph? Like, yeah, like really, what is there to guard him with? Not that you can guard him anyway if you wanted to. His season is somehow underrated. He's averaging 32 points a game, and he's not. He should be on the back of his prime, and he's not.
No.
To me at home, I like the Warriors in the game. I'll take the point or two if you want to give it to me, but I like the Warriors outright tonight.
You know what? All right, that's what we're going to do then. We're going to do Golden State money line, just straight up. Okay, so I was looking plus 105. So it's Golden State getting 2 points. We'll take the money line for a small bet there. And then the last game of the night is Houston at Portland. Blazers are 14.5 point favorites, over under 238. I hate these huge lines. I think they're just very difficult to bet. But it's Rockets 14. What is it?
Did you see Portland money line? It's like minus 1,600. It's like a massive money line. Yeah.
Yeah.
You do that. Yeah.
Minus 14.99.
Extremely difficult. Houston hasn't won a game, and you can't even remember the last time. They did play Milwaukee tough in Milwaukee somehow.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't a blowout. It's hard to lay 14.5 points.
Agreed. I can't lay 14.5.
I think if I had to do it, gun in my head, I would take Portland, lay the points. Houston is always getting huge amounts of points, and they always suck against the spread. I feel so bad for that whole franchise. I love the fan base of Houston, and between the Astros, cheating, and James Harden pretty much setting the franchise back a decade. The Texans are a mess. Like, really, that fan base has taken a beating over the last 12 months. Maybe a topic of the day, but really, the Houston fan base, wicked depressing.
That's a good point.
They don't have to wear masks in Houston, so maybe they got the last laugh overall. But boy, those sports teams, what a beating!
Yeah, it's funny. Let's see. Are fans allowed to watch those games? I want to look at their attendance. The attendance for their last game, because it's kind of funny. You're going to get no, I don't think they are either. I think they're probably at like half capacity or something. So it's not even like.
Have you heard about what's going to happen when we get to the playoffs? Are some teams going to have fans and some teams not?
Yes. It's interesting that you bring it up, because I was listening to someone do a deep dive on the Suns today, and they're thinking that the Suns are going to be at full capacity for fans pretty soon. And if they're playing an LA team, they'll still be getting like 2,000 in the building. So the Phoenix could have a huge crowd advantage in their home games if it goes that way.
That's a massive advantage. I mean, in NBA playoffs, crowd noise is worth something. Like playing at home in a playoff game is absolutely a 3 to 5 point swing. And there's been a million studies done on it, whether it's an extra 2 whistles or an extra whistle and a half, a charge block. I mean, that crowd noise is NBA arenas are really, really loud. They're not open air like baseball and football. It's crazy in an NBA playoff environment. If you're a team that's playing in like a bubble atmosphere with 2,000 fans in there, it sounds like a high school game.
Yep.
You're leaving something on the table. It's a shame. It really is. And when it becomes a factor, how I would love for Phoenix to play Miami. Oh, how I would love for the fans to be rewarded for it. But that's interesting. I haven't read enough about it. I haven't really been focused on that. I'm trying to get my bearings on who's going to be in the playoffs. But
exactly,
a real factor.
Yeah, completely agreed. All right, so as far as bets, I put 2 in before the show started. So we got Wizards +8 and the total under 237.5. I haven't seen the score of that game. It's probably the third quarter by now or at halftime. Then we got the Bucks Spurs under 233.5. Got the Rockets Blazers under 238, and then the Jazz Warriors got Golden State straight up at +105. So those are the 5 things we got going tonight. Cool. All right. So we only have about 10 minutes left. And actually, time really flew on this one. So we were going to talk last show. We kind of talked about the playoffs and we focused heavily on the West. And we kind of agreed this time we'd kind of look at the standings again and focus a little bit more on the East. So so we bring up the standings. You got the Sixers in the 1 spot, 3 games ahead of Brooklyn. So unless they completely peed on their own leg, they're going to lock up the 1 seed. You got Brooklyn at 2. And then Milwaukee at 3, and they're only a game apart, or half game apart, I should say. And then it goes Knicks, Hawks, Heat, Celtics, Hornets, Wizards, Pacers. So I guess how do you want to attack this? You want to talk about the top? You want to talk about the middle? Like what's most interesting about as we enter kind of the final stretch of games for the season?
Well, to me, the first thing, Philadelphia lost a couple of games. They lost a game to the Bucks, I believe. They lost to the Nets. Like there was a time where the Nets actually were the 1 seed, and I came on legit fantasy basketball, and I said the Sixers have the easiest schedule for the last 15 games, and they're going to finish with the 1 seed, and they have. Brother Ray, I know Brother Ray is not about these Sixers, and he doesn't trust them, and neither do I. To be honest with you, when it gets to the good teams, I wonder how it's going to go. To me, the most interesting story is the Nets-Bucks, and that series is going to be dynamite. But just for the sake of talking about something different, Miami in the preseason was everybody's favorite to be either the 1 seed or right there as the 1 seed. Now, this is before Harden goes to Brooklyn. So you're looking at the teams, and it's Miami's loaded, and Miami did this, and Miami did that. And now Miami is like creeped up from like the 12 all the way to the 6.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous basketball team that I wouldn't want to play. If Jimmy Butler starts playing playoff minutes, he's averaging over 20 a game, playing pretty much as a part-time player. That's the one team in the Eastern Conference that really scares me, that I think can make some noise that people aren't really talking about right now. But watch how many people jump on that bandwagon when the playoffs start and start putting them as like their dark horse team, and it's the Miami Heat. So if the
playoffs started today, who would they play? The Bucks in the first round?
They would
that would be
Bucks.
tough.
But they're only a game behind the Knicks and tied with the Hawks.
Yeah.
So if the ball bounces right, the Heat could end up as a 4 seed, which is pretty much kind of what you would expect. It. And now
no, go ahead.
If Miami ends up at the 4 seed and plays the Sixers, right? So if your Final Four is Philadelphia, Miami, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee, you could have predicted that at the beginning of the season. Like the whole season happened, and Miami still ended up in that top 4. So they're a super dangerous team. I'm hoping they don't finish 4 because I don't want Philly to play them in a 7-game series. I don't want to see it.
Yeah, that's a great point. So what happened? I mean, I'm looking at their record, right, and I'm looking at it kind of broken down, by month, and they started off so poor. They were December 2-2, January 5-10, then February 10-5, March 7-7. Now April and May they're combined like 13-7. So they're not like crushing it right now, but they definitely turned it around. Like what happened? What took so long?
I don't know if it's what took so long as much as it's the way the schedule worked for them, because it seems like they'll win 3, lose 1, win 2, lose 1, win 3. So they slow and steady. They didn't want a big, amazing run to get up there in the standings. They kind of piecemealed it together. But what they've been doing lately is winning the games that they're supposed to win. And when you're in the Eastern Conference, if you just win the games you're supposed to win, that'll put you at 500 because there's enough bad basketball for them to play. And they've really done that. They have shooting. They have a big. And they have a go-to scorer. I mean, they have everything they had at the beginning of the season, and now they kind of have a record to match. So that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I think what you said, like if they can get out of the 6, if they can make the 4 or 5, they should easily beat the Knicks or the Hawks. I don't want to say easily, but they should handle them. They should handle them, and then you're in the second round, like you said, and that would be a tough one. That could be really tough for Philly. But I think
of all sports, I feel like outside of maybe NFL quarterback, but experience matters in the NBA playoffs. You don't see a lot of these like young teams. The first time through, they always have growing pains, and that's why I don't trust Utah to go to the finals, really, because when have they demonstrated they could do that? But Miami's already been there, so they get in the tournament. They're a veteran team with all the ingredients. And probably the best coach in the NBA, if not one of the top 3 or 4 coaches in the NBA. They're a dangerous basketball team, and hopefully Boston beats them tomorrow night.
Good luck with that one. I don't think you want to put your hopes on the Celtics. And then the only other team, I guess, kind of approaching it slightly different. We talked about them a little bit. I really hope. It looks like, I shouldn't say I hope. Washington looks like they're going to hang on to one of these spots in the tournament. They could. I don't think they'll make it out of. I don't think they'll make it out of that bracket. But if they could easily win the 2 games against with the Celtics, Hornets, Pacers, and them, they could easily win the 2 games, and then they'd be really fun to watch. Like against the Nets would be fun. Against the Sixers would be fun. Like I really hope they make it through.
I do too, for the entertainment value alone, because the games are going to be fast paced. They're all going to be exciting. Westbrook's not scared of any of your big 3, big 4, big 12. He doesn't give a damn. He's like the poster boy for courage. And then Beal's had another under the radar, although I kind of don't blame people for not having Bradley Beal on the first name to come to mind. Because earlier in the season, a lot of his points felt like they were like hollow. They were getting smoked every night, and they were giving up 150 points. He would score 30. But they'll be fun to watch. I think the Eastern Conference players are going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so we have about 3 or 4 minutes left. So I want to hit. I wanted to hit coaches on the hot seat, but that'll take too long. We'll save that for next week. Because I think that's going to be an interesting conversation. So I wanted to just get your thoughts on one other topic, and then I'll hit you with the stat of the week. So I wanted to. We talked about the Jaylen Brown injury, but the other big injury is Zion Williamson. He's out for the year. Now, the thing that's it's an injury is an injury, but the thing that's interesting about that is that the entire New Orleans organization has been kind of complaining about the refs and the lack of calls and the fact that he's getting beat up worse than anybody since Shaq, all that stuff. So I'm kind of curious, what are your thoughts, on that? Is there some merit to their complaints? I don't think the injury is a result of that. They're trying to say it is. I don't think it is because you can see when he actually got hurt. It's on tape. But just that sort of whole thing that the organization is trying to do.
Well, there's a couple things. I'm glad that this is a topic. First of all, no, I don't blame the overall physical beating that he's taken all season on breaking a finger. Like you can be out fielding ground balls. You can be out fielding ground balls with a 6-year-old and fracture your finger. It's a finger. There's nothing. You can't develop your finger. It's a finger. It breaks if it breaks, okay? Nor do I think that this means when Zion came out because of his physical style of play, a lot of people said he's not going to be able to stand up to an NBA season. He's going to be injury prone because of the wear and tear. I don't think that's the case. I don't think this injury has to do with that. I will say this. I've refereed a lot of basketball games, like a lot. And when there's a guy that is so physical like that, it's really hard to officiate him. There's a guy in Rhode Island. He's a legend of Rhode Island. His name's Cal Bridges. And he scored like 2,000 points at Davies. Guy is like a local legend or whatever. I was refereeing a men's league, and he was in the league. I was young. Maybe I was in my early 20s. I was petrified to officiate his games because every single time down, he would initiate contact on offense. Every time a shot went up, he would push on defense. And it's just how he played, and he was so strong that bodies were always flying around him. And that's almost Zion. So as an NBA official, you have to referee him differently because otherwise he won't be allowed to play. And a lot of the physical contact he takes, he's initiating, especially on offense. He does a really good job of using his hands to not be going through people like Shaq did. Shaq would go through guys. Zion's a little bit more crafty with the basketball than Shaq, but he's going to take a beating. And there's nothing that the Pelicans or anybody else can do about it. He doesn't flop. Like if you look at LeBron flops. Like Zion doesn't do that. He plays through contact and he finishes through contact. So a lot of the times these officials, Zion will go to the basket and get fouled and score. And if they blow the whistle, it looks like a weak foul call because he scores so easily anyway. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. I do like what the organization is doing, though, and that's bringing awareness to it. Phil Jackson was great at this. Bring awareness to it because you want the calls. Like, bring awareness. He's getting hit every time down and put the onus on the official as opposed to pulling a Brad Stevens, zipping your lip, and then just letting the referees do what they want. So I don't think the injury has anything to do with that.
No.
But, it's going to be an issue for his entire career. It was an issue for Shaq's entire career, too.
Yeah. That's what I was going to bring up because there's no denying that you get banged like that every single night. When you're 20, that's one thing. When you're 30, it's entirely different. And it started to slow down Shaq. It started to slow down anyone that plays big and physical like that. And I think you bring a different perspective to it.
And we're only talking about the on-the-ball stuff. Let me give you another example off the ball. If I'm playing defense and Shaq is setting a screen, I can run into him as hard as I want to, and he's not going to move. So you see these guys just take blows when they set screens. Now, if that's Kevin Garnett setting that same screen, maybe a bad example. If that's Tim Duncan setting that same screen, if I run into him hard, he's going to fall down, and I'm going to get called for a foul. So over the course of a season, there's a million ways that you can hit a big guy that doesn't hurt them, does hurt them, but they're not going to fall. It's not going to look like a foul. You're going to actually look like a weakling doing it. And that's why you had these guys like Chris Paul's a dirt. John Stockton would hit guys all over the place. But because he's small and they're big, it's not like it's not causing whistles. And I think there's a lot off the ball where Zion's just taking a beating. And because he's a big man, he can handle it. Perhaps he's not getting the whistles he should.
Yeah. And the other thing that's funny about it, I looked into this too. He actually has the second most free throw attempts in the league. So he is getting whistles, and that's the counter argument. He's getting a lot of whistles and then the counter to the counters, but he's still not getting enough whistles. So it's a very interesting sort of dilemma because he's taken a ton of free throws, which means he's getting a lot of calls, but he's still taking a beating.
I've coached some pretty badass teams that like we were in there. We kind of played I coached some fast break teams like some UNLV style basketball. And referee, I would be constantly wanting, listen, we're going to the rim every single time. And the referee would point at the scoreboard and be like, well, the fouls are 9-2.
Yeah.
And my answer is, they fouled me 20 times. Like, I don't want to hear about 9-2. We're not keeping track of that. I'm telling you he got fouled right there. Don't tell me about what happened. It's 9-2. And be like, well, it's 9-2. Yeah, but it doesn't make a difference. And I think that's the thing that happens with Embiid and Shaq and Zion. So if Embiid's I don't know you said Zion's second, maybe Embiid is first. I don't know. But if he's taking 12 free throws a game, it probably should be 16 from his perspective. How many times are you letting it go because you're tired of putting it on the line?
Yeah, exactly. That's the crazy part. Like they said the exact same thing. Like the NBA refs are saying the same thing to the Pelicans. Like they're like, he's taken 12 free throws. Isn't that enough? Well, not if he should have taken 22. Right. Like it's such a strange argument. Like that argument does not hold water.
Just call each play on its merit. Like if you're an umpire in baseball, you don't just throw a ball. You don't just call it a ball when it comes down over the plate because the last 5 were strikes.
Yeah,
but that's not how you're supposed to call a game, right? So same thing in the NFL. Like it's either interference or it's not. Like you don't say, oh, we called interference last time, so this time down you can hip check the receiver. No, but in the NBA it seems like they do a lot of that, and some of it, I hate officials. I think you have to be a real scumbag of a person to be a basketball official. But
didn't you say you officiated? Didn't you say you reffed a lot of games?
I did, and then they tried to convert me to that cult, and I was like, no. But I like to do it for kids. It's a little bit different. But at that NBA level, it really is an impossible job. I mean, the smallest guys on an NBA floor are the biggest guy that you've ever seen, and they're hitting each other, going faster than you can even comprehend. And then the replay is in like 1,000 times slow motion, and everyone's like, oh, you missed the call.
Yep. And then on top of it all, everyone's complaining to you. You got the players complaining, the coaches complaining. Everyone's got something to say, and you're trying to officiate, like you said. They're the biggest people you've ever seen, moving the fastest you've ever seen, and everyone's telling you you're doing it wrong no matter what you do. So I don't.
Yeah, it's a real tough job. It really is. So I get it. What I didn't like though is for the Zion to say he broke his finger because it's an accumulation of all the injuries. No. Jim McMahon can't remember his address because of an accumulation of all the hits.
Yes.
Like, when you talk about an accumulation, or you see like Charles Barkley can't walk up a flight of stairs because of the accumulation of all the minutes and the pounding. Don't tell me you broke your finger because the accumulation of hits. Like, that's kind of crap.
Yeah.
Like you in your first game and break your finger. You broke your finger, bro.
Exactly. That's why I completely agree with that. But yeah, it's a very interesting topic. So. I'm glad we got into that one. So the last thing, as usual, is the Genius Kev stat or analytic of the week. This was going to be a pretty basic statistic, and I'll tell you what got me onto it. It was an interview with Eddie Johnson, of all people. So I listened to a ton of stuff, and I just try to kind of piece it all together. And Eddie Johnson was talking about what he considers his best season. He obviously was a sixth man in the 80s, I think maybe even into the 90s. Unbelievable player off the bench.
Man of the Year award.
What?
You might have.
Yeah. And he was on the I think he was on the Kings for a while. He was on the Suns. He actually started, he said, on the Kansas City Kings, so he's probably been a little bit. He may have been even in the 70s, but anyway, or early 80s, I should say. But anyway, so he monster off the bench, just a great scorer. And he had a season where he averaged like 21 points or 24 points in 28 minutes a game. So we kind of got me thinking about points per minute. Like, it's an interesting stat. It doesn't tell everything because you can get guys that only played 3 minutes and scored 6 points and they're averaging 2 points per minute. Obviously, that's BS. So I kind of went back and I did some filtering and stuff, and I looked for guys that played at least 40 games in a season, so a lot of games, and did some minutes things, and just looked at kind of leaders in points per minute. And the thing that's really interesting about it is a lot of the names, and the reason why I bring it up, you'll know in a second. Like, a lot of names you're going to get, you're going to say, yeah, that makes sense. So number one, Wilt Chamberlain in 61-62, James Harden 18-19, Giannis 19-20, Wilt Chamberlain again 62-63, Harden again 19-20. Then we get Steph Curry 20-21, Joel Embiid 20-21, Michael Jordan, only time he's on the list, 86-87, Russell Westbrook 16-17, and then I'll skip the rest of them and just say there's one other guy from this season, Bradley Beal 20-21. So the top 15 all-time points per minute, there's 3 of them going on right now in this season: Steph, Joel Embiid, and Bradley Beal, which goes to kind of what stuff you've brought up a lot on the show, which is the way the offense is run now, the way, like, the types of shots people are taking and everything. And the other thing is you got Harden from 18-19, Harden from 19-20. So you got 5 of the top 15 all in the last couple of seasons. So just kind of, and most of the guys in the past were big guys. And it's just, to me, it's a very interesting metric to kind of talk about. So I guess, what are your thoughts on that, having 3 of the top 15 right now?
Yeah, I think that's the pace of play situation. So when you talk about a minute of an NBA basketball game, if the 86 Celtics are dribbling the ball down the floor and they're passing it to the wing, and then the big guy screens for the big guy, the whole set takes 15 to 18 seconds, and maybe you get 2 possessions in a minute, or maybe you get 2 possessions, maybe you get 3 possessions in 2 minutes. Now, Bradley Beal gets the ball. He takes 3 dribbles up the right sideline. He pulls up for 3. He makes it, and then it's a quick stop, and then we do the same thing. You can get 6 possessions in the middle. With Harden, one of the things about Harden's stuff is the way he plays. He gets to the free throw line so many times that it slows the game down. So he gets a million possessions per minute. I think it's an interesting stat. It is crazy how Wilt is in every single NBA trivia stat.
Yeah.
If someone asks you an NBA question and says list 5 guys that did, name it. Just put Wilt in there. That's like a gimme. It is crazy how these guards, it's just all guard dominated stuff right now. Like as Beal pretty hard, and they always have the ball in their hands, and they do good things with it. You can't blame them.
No, the thing that jumped out at me, honestly, like talking about guard dominated, is that Jordan is only on the list once, and I think it shows kind of 2 things. That they got pace of play is 80s, but 2, he played so many freaking minutes. He was probably over 40, 42 minutes a game for at the prime of his career, and he played every game. And it's the number of games and all the minutes that guy logged because he always wanted to be on the floor. And like when you get the stats now with that super efficient style of play you described, plus they only play probably 36 minutes, it's a very interesting way to kind of compare it.
Add in that they only play when they feel 100%, right? So you can add that in too. I don't know how much of it would factor, but it must factor a little bit. What is crazy though is when I was growing up, so I was born in 79. When I was growing up, Jordan was when I was in middle school age where coaches started telling you what to do. Jordan was just passing Magic and Bird. And the only thing you ever heard is what a ball hog he was. He's a ball hog. Don't be like Jordan, because I wasn't known for particularly caring about sharing. So don't be. You're not Michael Jordan. You want to play like Magic Johnson or Larry Bird. Jordan was unselfish by today's standards. Like the amount of shots that these guys take, these alpha players on every team, Jordan couldn't even think about taking this many shots. Like maybe young Jordan when the Bulls were shitty, but these guys, James Harden has absolutely no conscience. Steph, not only does Steph have no conscience, every single play down, they're running a play for Steph. Like there's no triangle involved in Golden State. It's which way is Steph going to go when he gets off the screen, and if he dribbles it up, where's he going to stop from? So all those thought Jordan was a ball hog. I can imagine they kind of check out of the NBA when they watch James Harden play it, and it is crazy how the game has evolved to that. And in a lot of ways, it's unfortunate because if you're not one of the 40 best players on the planet, you're a role player. Like there is no more 3 guys on a team that there's no more equal opportunity shit. Where if Danny Ainge would still get some shots for the '86 Celtics. Danny Green's getting 2 shots a half for the Sixers. It's like, we don't need you. And that's what our best players are taking shots. It's like, we don't need you on offense. Your job is not that.
That's a really good point. There's no like sort of middle class. Like in the NFL, they talk about that in terms of salary, but in the NBA, there's no sort of middle class in terms of like role. Like you got, like you think of those teams in the 80s, like the guy that, since I was thinking about Eddie Johnson, another guy that like sort of like that was Vinnie Johnson on the Pistons, microwave, right? He comes off the bench red hot. You drop 12 to 17 points, and that was his thing, and it was appreciated and it was valued, and he had a bit in like that. He had a decent role. He said now like you're a role player with but no part of the real offense.
So we used to say stuff in that era, like when you said Eddie Johnson, like my first thought is, he can play.
Yeah.
Now you don't have or Aaron McKee. Someone says Aaron McKee from the Sixers, the Iverson year. Aaron McKee could play, and what he would do is come in the game and just play the game of basketball right. Yep. Now, if you're not the star, you're such a specialist that I don't know if Robin Williams, I don't know if Clint Capella is a good basketball player. Because his job is not even to play basketball; it's to rebound and block shots. And the other guys who all their job is to catch and jack up a 3. Whereas back then you had guys, you had to be a lot more well-rounded as a player. And you say, okay, what about Paul Pratt, Sidney Moncrief, man, he could play. And he averaged 16, 7, and 6. But you don't get those kind of guys that are just good ball players anymore because you have to be a specialist.
Yep.
And specialization is kind of, you're putting chess pieces together now, and you don't really have that all around. That's why when you see a Westbrook, he's underappreciated because people are like, "What the heck is this guy doing? He does everything."
Yeah, it's a really good point. Like and the weird thing is when one of those sort of starters, like when one of the guys that has a big role gets hurt, it's so hard to fill it because the team is built of all people that do one little bit right. So you can't.
That's a great point. So if you want to go back to your Pistons analogy, if Joe Dumars misses 7 games and Vinnie Johnson has to start those 7 games, you don't really have a big loss. Whereas right now, if Tobias Harris gets hurt, the guy that's coming in can only do one thing, whether it's all you can do is shoot threes or all you can do is play defense or whatever that skill is. Whereas in the earlier eras, you were looking for like all-around players, like can the guy play or not. And you don't really have a lot. It's less all-around players now than ever before in the NBA.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good point. Like you said, if you're not one of the top 40 on the planet, you're relegated to can you do one thing and can you like cling to a roster spot? And the craziest thing about it is if you can do one thing and cling to a roster, you're probably going to make $8 million a year.
Oh yeah,
you know?
That role, the rim runner role is pretty new. I mean, we think of Parrish as being that, but there was a lot more to his game than that.
Yeah.
And to watch guys like Robert Williams is going to go make a boatload of money, and I don't know if that guy knows how to play basketball or if he's just a big bouncy guy with good timing. Like I don't know. Like him and Capella and even Gobert to an extent, like those guys aren't. That's why Jokic is such a special guy because he's not that. He is total. He plays the whole game of basketball, and that's why I think old guys like us, we appreciate that a little bit more than maybe the kids do.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. All right, so with that, I'm going to say one other comment that Eddie Johnson made that I thought was really funny. Then we'll wrap it up. He was saying, so he played 82 to 99, so it's kind of close. And the Kansas City Kings became the Sacramento Kings in 85, 86. So that's why he kind of mentioned Kansas City. But he said he kind of every once in a while he'll look at his mother and wish he was born later because he's like, if I were born now, if I were playing now. And I had those skills. He's like, number one, I wouldn't have been a sixth man because six men get typically paid less. And he's like, number two, just the inflation on the salary. So the other thing he said was, he's like, I'm joking. I don't really harbor any grudge to the kids that are playing now and making the money. He's like, I just wish there would be more respect for the guys that like set the table in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and that were kind of made the game, allowed you to play now and make $40 million a year. So it was a really good interview with him. He seems like a pretty decent guy.
I'll just say a couple things about that. First of all, that's everywhere in the world where we don't appreciate what someone said. You think we're standing on the shoulders of giants and we think we're flying? I think that applies in a lot of places. The other thing is I don't feel too bad for Eddie Johnson because a quick Google search tells me he made $10.26 million in his career. So hopefully Eddie's put a little bit away. I feel like he's the type of guy that did, and Ed's not doing too bad. Yep,
true. Yeah, and he's like the broadcast guy for the Suns, so he's it's not like he's doing nothing these days. But cool, yeah, it's a great.
Is when he was like scoring 20 a game for the Kings, he was making 225, which is like.
Yep. Isn't that nuts? Absolutely nuts. But that's just back then the teams weren't worth what they're worth now. The broadcast rights weren't worth what they are. So you got to you factor all in. It's just absolutely insane that to play like children's game.
Hayward makes that in a game.
Yep, exactly. I love when you see with baseball contracts, they're like you get people that will break it down by like every pitch so and so throws is like $175,000, and it's just like. What? But I mean, the money's got to go somewhere, and it might as well go. Might as well be equitably split to the players and the ownership. So
that piss off non-sports fans.
Yeah.
He's not as valuable as an ambulance driver. Yeah, no, we know that. But we also know that he's worth $25 million because ticket prices are through the roof.
Yep. Exactly. All right. Well, Coach TJ, any final thoughts? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, buckle up. I mean, there's not much left, and then we're going to get into the playoffs. So hopefully we get our full, Brother Ray back in time for the playoffs. Hopefully everybody gets where they need to be, and I'll see you on Thursday.
Yep, sounds good. Excellent. All right, so we'll wrap it up here. It's Genius Kev and Coach TJ, legit fantasy basketball Monday, May 10th. We got the game review for the last week. If you're interested in that, we got a couple of picks for it tonight, and then we're gearing up for the end of the regular season and the playoffs. Have a good night, everyone.